here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and as promised, I'm here with this video on how to make homemade organic coconut cream chocolate. Now this is my own recipe, and I will be sharing the written recipe through a link in the description box down below. And here's the great thing, is that's going to include all the options. So I'm going to be sharing the recipe for just the basic chocolate, plus a basic white chocolate recipe, plus all the options you can do to make it a peppermint chocolate, like peppermint patties or peppermint bark, orange cream chocolate, raspberry chocolate, and the list goes on. And the other thing is this particular recipe is totally vegan, as well as I'm going to give you an option to make it keto friendly. So let's get busy on this recipe. What you want to do is you want to start off with a heavy stainless steel pan. Now this isn't heavy, but it's my favorite one to use for making the chocolate because it's got a little pour spout here. It makes it a lot easier, and it's just the right size. And you can use a double boiler if you want. I never do. I either put it on the wood stove in the lowest heated spot or on a trivet, or if I'm using one of my hot plates in the summer hooked up to the solar power, then I set the heat very low. You don't want to overheat your cacao butter. So that's the first thing you're going to do, is you're going to start off with some cacao butter. And for this particular recipe, for the cream part, the white chocolate part, I'm using 6 ounces of the cacao butter. I recommend going ahead and just putting that in the pan as is and starting to melt it down. And again, just keep stirring it, keep it low. It's going to take a while, but you don't want to burn it because it's going to really change the flavor, and it will taste burnt if you get it too hot. Once you have that fully melted, then what you're going to want to do is add to that 1/3 cup of powdered sugar. So right here I have some homemade powdered sugar. That's all I do anymore, is I make my own, and I use organic cane sugar. You can also use organic coconut sugar. Just keep in mind, if you're using organic coconut sugar, you might need to add a little bit more because it's not near as sweet as cane sugar is. But I'll link you to the video where I show how to make your own powdered sugar. It's pretty simple. It's just 2 ingredients. You just got to have your sugar and some kind of starch to add to it. In this picture right here, that little bowl of powdered sugar is, you can see it's a little tan in color. That's the one I made using coconut sugar. So anyway, I like making it myself because I can make it for far less and keep it organic than what it costs to buy an organic powdered sugar. So 1/3 cup of that. And it's important when you're making a white chocolate that you stick with powders. You can use honey in there, but you got to get the right consistency. So then the other thing you want is your organic coconut milk powder. I've got here both Now Foods and Anthony's, 2 of my favorite brands. Both of these are very good, so whichever brand you think you would prefer. So anyway, you're adding 1/3 cup of that, mixing it in very well into that melted cacao butter. And if you're going keto, instead of adding the powdered sugar, just do an 1/8 of a teaspoon of your monk fruit in there, your monk fruit extract. And this is what I recommend over any other non-nutritive sweetener, because I believe it's both healthier than all the others, including stevia, and it definitely has a better flavor, especially over stevia, which can be kind of bitter. So you would just replace that 1/3 cup with only an 1/8 teaspoon. But you may, to get the right consistency, need to increase your coconut milk powder in that to make up for the difference in powder that's not going in there to get the right consistency of the chocolate. So you might even want to use 2/3 cup of the coconut milk powder, and then just your 1/8 teaspoon of the monk fruit sweetener. But you can use stevia or whatever non-nutritive sweetener that you prefer. And then also to add to that, coconut flakes. I would say a minimum of 1/3 cup. I added a heaping 1/3 cup to mine, and I still think it could have used a little bit more of the coconut flakes. But because the coconut milk powder has a nice strong coconut flavor, you could just add another 1/3 cup of that instead of the coconut flakes. It depends on how much you like that texture of the coconut. So once you have that done, you want to make sure that you have something ready before you have it all mixed up. Now the thing I use typically is just a glass pie pan, and for this, definitely put some coconut oil down on there, the virgin coconut oil, so you're getting even more of that coconut flavor. A lot of times I'll use butter, but since this was a coconut cream chocolate, I used coconut oil in that. And especially if you're vegan, that's going to be the better option anyway. And so you want to have that ready to go. But there's other options. If you would rather not do it in a pie pan, you can use like the little silicone muffin cups like I did to make both the peppermint patties and also the peanut butter cups. I don't do it that way often. Mostly I prefer to use the pie pan because it's just easier. But the nice thing about the silicone is you can also just press those out once they're fully set. The other option to make it like smaller little chocolates is to get some cute little silicone molds like this. I have a whole bunch of these. I have animal shapes. I have all kinds of shapes. Those are great too for making the gummies. So if you've got grandchildren or children at home, these can be very fun to use these. And then when it's all set, again, you just easily press it out. And if you're interested in my gummy recipe, I'll go ahead and link to that down below as well. By the way, with the silicone, you don't have to grease it at all. It's fine just to pour it directly in there. With the glass pie pan, yes, you should put some kind of oil or grease in there. That's going to help it lift out much easier. So then what I do is I like to set that in the freezer as is. But you want to make sure wherever you're setting it, you keep it very level. Even though I had a totally cleared off shelf, my shelf must be slightly swayed from the weight of the other things in there because it still ended up thicker on one side than the other. So just be warned of that. It's not a big deal to us, but if you're making a big thick bunch anyway, it can be a lot harder to cut on that thick side. So you want to keep it as level as possible. And then let that set. Just keep it in the freezer until you're ready for the next layer. So the next layer is a little simpler because it's just the chocolate layer. So for that, you're going to start off the same way. I did another 6 ounces, but if you want less of the chocolate flavor, then you can just cut that back to just 4 ounces of your cacao butter. So again, you're just going to go ahead and melt that down just as is. And as soon as it's melted, you're going to add in a 1/2 cup of your cacao powder. Now your option, since it's the top layer, is you can go ahead and put 2 tablespoons. If you're doing 6 ounces, put 3 tablespoons of raw honey. Mix that in there very well. It'll take a little while to mix it in. So you want to mix it while it's still pretty warm so it will blend well. But it's better to not put it in there while it's melting. I've done that before. If you're melting at a low enough heat, it shouldn't damage your raw honey too much. But if you're trying to really keep the benefits of the raw honey, you're trying to heat it as little as possible. But keep in mind, sometimes the honey can separate from the chocolate. This is why I don't like to use it on the bottom layer at all. I don't mind using it in the top layer. You can still do the same option of doing the 1/4 teaspoon of the monk fruit extract, or even the 1/3 cup of the powdered sugar right here if you don't want to use the honey. The nice thing about the powder is it's going to help it hold its shape. It's not going to separate the way honey does, but I do still like that kind of chewy texture that the honey adds to that top layer. So anyway, mix that in really well, whatever it is that you do, and then pull that pan out of your freezer and go ahead and pour that chocolate over the top. Now I tried letting it sit out of the freezer first for a little bit and sprinkling the coconut, some extra coconut on top, and it still wanted to sink in. It didn't set up enough, so I put it in the freezer for about 5 minutes, and then I didn't pull it out. I just reached my hand in and sprinkled some more coconut right on top. You want it to be at least soft enough on top that the coconut will stick to it, but you don't want it so runny that it's going to sink in if you want the coconut to be visible. So letting it set in the freezer for at least for about 5 minutes seems to be just right to be able to sprinkle that coconut on top and then have it still be visible and stay on top yet be stuck into the chocolate. And then just leave it in there until it's fully set. Sometimes it'll crack on its own to make it easier to break up, which if you might have seen in the photos or the video clips that I've been putting, you might have noticed that the white chocolate bottom was already starting to crack from being in the freezer. That's great when you're doing it that way, because then the next step, which when you're doing it in a pie pan, which can be the hardest depending on how thick it is is breaking that up. Now, if you're doing 4 ounces and 4 ounces for a total of 8 ounces in that whole 9-inch pie pan, it's usually pretty easy to break up by hand. Now, you can see in this video clip, I was actually able to lift the whole piece out. And that's thanks to that layer of coconut oil I put in the pan first. And I could just lift the whole thing out. But because it was pretty thick, because I did 6 ounces and 6 ounces, it was a little too hard, except for on the thinner side, to break by hand. So what I do is I use a butter knife, and then I just push it down into the chocolate, straight down into the chocolate this way, and then that will cause it to break, and then you can separate that out and then just keep doing that to get it down to the sizes that you want. It doesn't matter how big. You can have big pieces like this or little pieces like that, however you want to do it. So that's what makes making your homemade chocolate fun, is you can do whatever you want to it. Now, one thought I had, and the reason I have my vanilla extract out. Now, the vanilla extract, if you're making your own homemade vanilla extract or you're buying it, it's not going to blend well with the fat, with the cacao butter and all that. However, if you have vanilla powder or you're making your own, I would recommend trying that. I'm going to do this soon. I'm going to finally pull out the vanilla beans out of this, try it in this first, and then if I like the way it turns out, I'm going to pull the vanilla beans out of my perpetual vanilla extract and do the same thing, and then just add new vanilla beans in there. And that is by taking the vanilla beans that you've already used to make an extract, dehydrate them really well enough that you can actually powder it. Now, again, I have not done this myself yet, but I believe it should work. I know some people have said they've done that. So a vanilla powder, I think, would add a really nice flavor, especially when you're doing the coconut cream chocolate, as well as the orange cream chocolate, which is another one of my recipes. And that one does involve using the powdered organic orange peels. So one of the reasons why I like to dehydrate up the orange peels that I save from any organic oranges, whether they be satsumas, tangerines, or actual oranges, and then I use them for flavoring in breads, pancakes, chocolates, and many other things. Even the Asian orange chicken that I make, and I have a recipe on, a written recipe and a video recipe. I'll link to that in the description box down below so that you can check that out if you're interested. But anyway, I was thinking just adding a little bit of that powder, maybe a teaspoon to each, both the chocolate and the white chocolate section. I think that would add a really nice flavor, but it could possibly change the color of it just a little bit if you're talking about the white chocolate, if that even matters. All right, well, that's it for this particular recipe. So don't forget to open up the description box down below by clicking on Show More right down here below my channel name on this side if you're on a computer. But if you're on a smart device, it'll be a little gray arrow over on this side. That will open up the description box so you can find all the links and information I'll be putting down below. That way you can find the link to the different chocolate recipes and to the written recipe I'll be putting down there. That will include the written form of all the other recipes as well. And hopefully I didn't forget anything, and if I did and I realized it during editing, just keep in mind whenever that happens, I always add in text things that I may have forgotten. So if you're just listening, you may want to go back and watch in case I forgot something. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.